thank you for your attention, at least for the next 30 minutes. It's great to have you all here, and thank you for choosing this specific session. I know every brand, agency, media company compete for attention, especially in a world where our phones, notifications, feeds is really competing for every second of our time. Capturing attention is already hard, and keeping it is even harder. So we'll be exploring how brands earn attention and how we hold on to it, and how do we try to measure it to connect it with the business impact. My name is Hugh Kim. I'm the Director of US Partnership at WEBTOON. Can you raise your hand if you read comic books when you were young? Maybe, yeah, most of you. Thank you. For those of you who don't know WEBTOON, we are the world's largest digital comic app, and we are attracting 160 million Gen Z story lovers around the world. And really grateful, and thank you, Brand Innovators, to having me as a moderator for this session. All right, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our amazing panelists here. We're coming from different corners of media and marketing worlds, so we'd like to have different point of view on this matter of attention. Why don't we each introduce ourselves briefly, who you are, what you do? Maybe, yeah, start from you.
Thanks, Hugh, and thanks everybody for turning out. I'm Jeff Cucinell. I'm the President of Digital Experience at iHeartMedia. Fancy words to talk about digital marketing and digital product, and thanks for having us.
Hey everybody, my name is Shane Quinn. I'm a VP of Strategy at George B. Johnson, better known as GPJ. We are an experience marketing agency, some would say the largest in the world. We've got 30 offices globally, 9 here in the US, and we do everything from big giant conferences like Dreamforce and Google Next down to consumer activations and sports activations and everything in between. And I think one thing that we're seeing across the board is an uptick in brands investing in experiences as a way to cut through the AI slop-driven attention vampire economy that we're all currently operating in. So happy to bring that perspective to the panel here and excited to be here.
I'm Jennifer Warren, and I lead global brand marketing and creative at Indeed. We are the largest job site, and my job is to help people get jobs. And similarly, we're looking at different ways to get attention and thought I could bring some perspective to the table. So looking forward to this conversation.
God, it's hard to follow. What a cool crew. Hi, everyone. Amanda Evans. I lead brand strategy, consumer insights, and partnerships for Wayfair. So we sell furniture and decor.
Thank you all. I'll have 3 questions, actually, and maybe one final lightning round question if we have time. Let me start with the first question. So how do we earn attention, right? It's beyond impression. How do we earn attention in your line of work? Maybe we'll start from you, Amanda.
Yeah, so I was reflecting on the question, and I feel like, when you think about like the basics of marketing, you think about like the 4 Ps of marketing is what you learn, like talk about in school, right? But I think it's the E's. Like I think the E's are now what's really mattering. So what I would say, the number 1 E is emotion. So just to give a quick example, like for Wayfair, we're a performance marketing company first, but we're really starting to evolve that. So when you think of like our holiday brief, right? It's like holiday, we're thinking about holiday right now. And if I briefed this in last year, I would have been like, talk a lot about like the product, our selection, like we have wreaths, we have Christmas trees, but now that looks completely different. It's all about emotion, right? Because that's what's going to grasp attention. So what I'm really thinking about is like, frankly, I literally wrote it the other day. I thought it was good. Tell me the feedback afterwards. But the memory, like the memory maker, that's what I'm really trying to lean into to get that attention via emotion.
Awesome. Memory, emotion, attention. Thank you.
Well, I would agree with that. I think that was good.
I know I need feedback on the brief, guys.
I liked it. Also, I have been reflecting on just how things have changed in marketing, and I would say one thing that has held true is really putting your customer at the center of everything, but that's also about really understanding their emotional needs and making sure the content, creative products you're developing is meeting those needs, which is also about capturing that emotion. I would, when I think about over the years how things have changed, it's really about in the past you would do a big brand campaign, and you'd put a lot of paid media behind it, and you'd call it done and assume that that means everybody's gotten your message. Whereas now you have to also really look at what is getting attention. We look at organic social as kind of a channel to tell us, is something relevant? Is it worth putting paid money behind it? And I think that's one of the things that has changed. But it all does go back to emotion and understanding your customer, so that you know what's going to resonate with them.
Resonance. Yes, thank you. Shane?
Yeah, I mean, emotion for sure. I think like in my world, experiential's popping off right now. It's strong.
Huge.
It's
Yeah,
as strong as it has been since the pandemic. And I think the reason is because it's a vehicle to create those strong emotional connections, and it's a pushback against, like I said, we live in the sloppiest, noisiest, most diluted, inauthentic marketing landscape probably ever, right? I would say. So creating an emotional connection, like people are seeking out things that are human and real and authentic, and experiences are kind of a fast track to get there. And more and more we're seeing brands investing in moving from just experiences based around transactions to based around emotions. And I can go into some examples later, but yeah, I think that's really the key, is people are looking for something that they can actually feel, and then for other people that feel that same thing, and you can start building shared purpose and shared participation around those things and communities around those things.
I'm very lucky to work for a medium that is sort of a magic trick in this area, right? If you think about it, and this sometimes surprises folks, 1/3 of all media consumption time is audio. You're driving in the car, you're working out in the gym, you're commuting, spent with audio. So we have the attention, which is really sort of our magic trick. The other piece of that, in the podcasting space, 8 out of 10 listeners of podcasts listened to 90% of an episode. Think about that. You have a 30-minute episode. People are listening for 26, 28 minutes. The average view time on a social media clip is 4 seconds. So we're able to tell stories and captivate audiences that way. But the only way we can do that is with trust. Trust is super important. Trust within the consumers. 78% of listeners say they treat their broadcast radio personalities or podcast hosts as a friend. They view it as a friend. So how do we do that? It's building trust with each of those communities. It'd be easy for me to sit up here and tell you about the growth of women's sports or the comedy sector, but we let our hosts and personalities like Sarah Spain and Will Ferrell do that. So they've already had a built-in trust with these communities, and that's the authenticness that you need to captivate attention and hold it.
Awesome. I'm already feeling our last question is the measurement, and we're talking about emotion, trust, relevance. How are we going to measure it? It's a really challenging topic, but I'll have the second question for you. So once we get the emotion right and capture the attention from the audience or customers, how do we hold on to it? How do we make sure they keep loyal, keep engaged with whatever we have to provide? I'll just give you an example of WEBTOON, because we're a storytelling platform, and then creators, they use cliffhangers to let people come back. You have to come back for the next episode, right? Actually, 85% of our readers come back for more times a week. So you got to have something to make sure they come back for you. So in line of your work, how do you struggle to make people come back and keep engaged? Yeah.
Great. I think we start with user feedback, what's happening in the comments. Especially in our field, we have callers on our radio stations. We have people utilizing tools to message our podcast hosts. There's social media. How do you go into comments and user feedback to talk to your consumers correctly or talk to your listeners correctly? They are going to give you instant feedback now on, did I like that topic? Did I not like that topic? Do I believe this? So really listening to the consumer can attract folks back, especially as we're talking AI slop and a ton of the things in there. We talked about guaranteed human. iHeart came out with that statement, and it's so true. We took for a moment AI into all of our podcasts and removed all the ums and ahs. And the feedback was, why did you do that? And it's one thing we learned from, where this is not natural. And we took that user feedback, corrected it, and you saw that retention of users coming back. So really listening to the consumer in different ways is super important to bring users back.
Should we go opposite way?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Being an experiential, like we have unique levers and dimensions that we can tap into to capture and leverage attention. You know, creating journeys and orchestrating touch points across space and time to create that progression. I think that idea of like rate of progress is really important. And the cliffhanger thing is interesting because I think that the primary benefit to a cliffhanger is obvious. It's you want to tune in to see what happens next. But I think there's a secondary benefit too, and it's that you're reassured that there is something that's next.
Yeah.
And you're confident that they're going to give you the next piece of the story and the next piece of the puzzle. And that, like, you know, at the end of the day, we're all just cave dwellers, and in our human reptilian brains, that idea of like iterative progress and signposting progress is really fulfilling and addicting to us. So we try to do that a lot at events, especially if it's like a B2B event in an education or a learning journey. Like, create these really iterative moments where you progress and you're rewarded, and then you go into the next thing and the next thing. Another unique dimension that we have to play with an experiential, and I think a lot of you are probably experiencing it this week, is activating the senses, like all 5 senses, and thinking about not just what something looks like, what it sounds like, what it smells like. And we've done that for a couple of brands recently, developed like experience brand identities with sensory identity, and we've worked with like specialty shops to develop custom brand scents, and you experience that when you go to a trade show booth or an activation at South by Southwest, or like into a retail space, into a store. And that like sensory recall is really good for memory and keeping and capturing attention.
Yeah. Great. You guys make this easy. So, you know, similarly, we spend a lot of time in the comments of our social media and look at it as, you know, a great place to get insights, do a lot of social listening and really build on that. And also just, you know, supporting what you were saying, looking at what do people need, what's something of value that we can give them by understanding the journey. In the world we're in, where we're spend a lot of time focusing on job seekers and job search, there are a lot of needs right now. And so understanding where's the challenge, is it in interviewing, is it around resumes, is it around knowing where to start, or job switching? So we really just look at the insights, we look where people are challenged, and develop, you know, content as well as experiences to fit those needs. And I think that's how you stay relevant and keep that attention.
So that's like a great point, because I think you can tap into an emotional response with just like a functional need if it's relevant to the consumer or your audience, right? It doesn't have to be based around a big, strong feeling. It can be around something really niche, but yeah, a need state is how you tap into something like that.
So I have a bit of a different answer. Not, I agree with everything that's been said, but so again, mind you, Wayfair's grew up a performance marketing company, but the way I'm thinking about my world is like, how do I get the attention? Is the emotion, it's having the right content, but how do I keep it? It's the science. We have so much data, and what you do with that data is how you're going to keep that attention. So just to give an example, like when I'm thinking about my campaigns, I'm thinking about what is the content I'm putting upper, mid, lower funnel, but then what I'm really double clicking into is what is the target. So is it current buyers? Is it lapsed buyers? Is it people who have never bought with me? What age demographic? And I am like getting so granular because channels like iHeart allow me to do so, which is great. But yeah, it's so much of my job today as like head of brand is the intersection between what I'll call the art, the emotion, and the science. And I think that's how you're going to keep the attention.
I love that. So it's not just art, it's not just emotion, but we really need to have the science elements, really data analytics to understand better. I mean, definitely really analyzing what people are reacting to your actions. So a lot of work to do.
I'm a wannabe data scientist, basically.
Awesome. Thank you for keeping your answers short. I think we're good on time. So for the last questions, we can probably spend more time. So yeah, it comes down to business impact. So it's good to have attention, good to keep them, but how those turn into the business impact results? And are we even measuring how we earn attention? Well, at WEBTOON, our primary metric would be read time. Like, make sure people come and read enough. Like, we have about 30 minutes. Readers would come to our platform and read 30 minutes, and we want to improve that as well. But how do you determine whether you are improving in terms of earning attention and retaining it in your work?
I'm happy to go, and because you're a wannabe marketing science or data scientist, one of the
wannabe
teams,
is the keyword.
Wannabe. I know. I'm going to give you an idea. So one of the teams that I developed was one called Brand Science that brings together that art and science that you were talking about, and it is to your point, a triangulation of data. And so some of the things we look at, and a couple of our new metrics, are mental mind share, which is understanding the consumer entry points that we're owning. So we want to own more of that head space and get people coming back to Indeed more often for more occasions. And so we are measuring that. So we've gone from like unaided consideration and some of those metrics, which are great and important, but they're not telling us what we need to know or giving us insight on how to improve our brand health. We look at on social our relevance score, and that is who is sharing, saving, commenting, and really engaging with us. And then, of course, we do look at the site metrics and who's actually creating accounts and applying or posting jobs. And it's kind of looking at the combination of those metrics is how we know if we are truly getting attention and that's driving the business.
It's interesting because I have a couple different facets of the role at iHeart and what we look at as metrics. So on the product side, it is true retention. We measure those user journeys on day one of onboarding until day 365 on how users are interacting with us. And that's what genres and artists are they choosing on their first day? Are they listening to a live local radio station? If we do that, how do we win them back? So we're measuring listening time with each and every campaign we run, whether it be an audio campaign or a social campaign. The one thing I will say, and Amanda, you kind of alluded to this, is making sure of who are you targeting with this. Controversial, but and maybe not, but we've gone so low funnel a lot of the times where we're all fishing in that 1 to 5% pond of consumers and trying to find the right metrics. And there, again, we've talked about, upper funnel metrics for years, like impressions and awareness. But I remember on the prep call, we were talking about relevancy. And is your brand relevant? How do you measure that? View through times, comments and shares, really trying to understand, are people interacting, not just seeing this, but interacting with the brand? Because if you're not getting enough visibility here, I see enough prompts or briefs where you're going for the one person that lives in one state that has one job. And it's very difficult to grow as a brand if you're that low of funnel. So making sure you're seeing those top line awareness metrics and making them a little bit more actionable, like view through times and amount of time viewing or listening, is super important in what we do.
I actually can build on that point. So we, I mean, to answer the question very directly, one of like the key metrics that I think is never going to be dead from a brand marketing standpoint is organic search traffic, right? If someone prefers you, they're coming to your site organically. At least that's easier to measure for a company like Wayfair, mind you. So for our e-com friends in the room. But taking a bit of a turn, I can't help but to think of my toddler at home. So I have a 3.5-year-old, his name's Julian, and love of my life. But God, the kid can ask why like 5 million times. I don't know, any other parents in the room can resonate with that, but there's a lot you can learn from that, right? Like having like that childhood mind. So I started, I don't know if it was subliminally or not, but I started asking that of my team. I'm like, tell me why. So if organic search traffic is up, why? And then if whatever the answer is, well, why? And I encourage all of us to have that like childhood mindset when looking at like the like measurement. It's so important because we were actually, we were looking at our CPMs and we were like, I won't name the channel, but there was a channel where we were like, it is so efficient. And our CPMs were like so low and we were so happy. But then when you actually like double clicked into why, we were targeting our existing customers who are already buying from us. Like obviously it's like going to do well, right? So again, I couldn't help but to remember my son Julian when you're measuring measuring the impact.
Yeah, at the risk of being like a shameless shill for experiential up here, events and experiences like South by Southwest are such incredible insight vehicles for brands looking to double click into the why and into the why and into the why. And like, from a behavioral standpoint, being able to use RFID or beacons or whatever to track people movement, where people are going, what they're engaging with, what visits are like, what dwell time is like, where they're spending the most time, and then drive tos, right? They engaged with this thing, and as a result, they went and did this thing. So we're starting to associate actions and outcomes with an interaction, and it's like super, super valuable. And then from a sentiment standpoint, I don't know the data point off the top of my head, but someone at an event is like much, 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 much more likely to fill out a survey than just digitally through GWI or whatever. But then beyond that, there have been some really interesting technological breakthroughs in terms of like sentiment measurement using AI specifically. We work with a company called Zenus AI, and they actually use video cameras, and they do what they call ethical facial analysis. So they're gleaning demographic information. They're anonymizing any personal data, but they're gleaning demographic information, and then it can measure things like attention, right? Like how many of you are looking down at your phones, how many of you keeping your eyes on the stage. It can measure attention metrics and how effective something was at keeping and capturing attention. And then it can also measure sentiment analysis, like affection. Did this affect someone positively or negatively or neutrally, which is the worst of all three? And so we've seen some really interesting use cases of brands using this to like evaluate, at a controlled space like a trade show, which like merch resonated most, like which merch should we push more in future retail environments or whatever. So it's like really, really interesting to get that level of sentiment and insight into how your consumers are responding to the things that your brand is delivering.
Looks like we are already utilizing many matrix and maybe more matrix to come along. Then it's, I think, the matter of interpretation. How do we interpret those different sources of matrix and results, right? We get results from the comments, we get results from the facial expression, results from the search, everything. It's, I think, our job to integrate into the insights, right? And you'll know if something was effective or not. The marketers would know if this is really getting attention, right? It's hard to prove with the matrix, but I think it's our role to make it into a story that this really was successful or not.
It's something that brands are, from an experience marketing standpoint, traditionally, like we were treated as production agencies, especially pre-pandemic. Now that is something that brands are so much more interested in, is leveraging us to help them make better marketing decisions as a result of the data that we've gleaned. So we've built a whole decision science practice because of that need that you're talking about, the need to turn the data and all the numbers and everything into a story, into meaning.
Well, and I would say consistency is so important too.
Is it working?
Can you hear me? Okay, we're gonna go with this. Thanks, Shane. I was just gonna say consistency is so important too. So like for a brand like Wayfair, whenever we're working with a partner, I always negotiate a brand lift study, like every single time. And when you're doing a brand lift study, you should always make sure that you have consistent questions for that reason. So we always have like custom brand lift study questions across all of our networks, across all of our partners, because then I can actually compare and contrast. No offense to my brand partners, I love them, but every time they're like, wait until I show you my results. And they're like, we grew 1,000% on awareness. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about the questions I gave you now. Like, great. So I would just push on consistency of metrics.
All right, we're down for lightning question. So let's break our character. Imagine you're just a consumer, not a marketer. What brand has caught your attention recently and why? Your personal experience. Who want to go first?
Okay, I'll go first. We didn't tell each other, but does anybody know the Korean skincare brand Medicube?
Yes.
Medicube.
Yay, thank you. Some of the ladies in the room. Honestly, when when I was thinking about this question, I'm like, that is truly the brand. I now have a drawer full of Metacube, and I learned about it on TikTok and Instagram, and I'm not even a big sucker for those influencer products, but then I started looking at like reviews, and it really like brought my attention, and I started buying the product, and then I bought it for gifts, and so that's one of them.
Thank you. I'm proud of Metacube, Korean beauty brand.
I've got a few. I'll try to keep it super quick, but we talked about brands investing in vibes. Michael's, like the arts and crafts store, did an activation for Taylor Swift's Eras tour, where they would like show up to the venue in the parking lot in like a mobile truck, and they would invite fans to come make friendship bracelets. And it's just like such an on-brand, like beautifully genuine experience that's a reflection of the value that Michael's provides as a brand. But on the flip side, I think one of the things that we're also seeing is brands creating these like intentionally jarring, abrasive experiences to elicit a reaction. Liquid Death is the best example. I love, if anyone here from Liquid Death, yeah, talk to me. I would love to work with you. But I think the coolest thing they do is called the Liquid Death Country Club. Has anyone heard of this? It's their loyalty fan program or whatever. But in order to sign up for the Liquid Death Country Club, you have to sell your soul to Liquid Death. So you have to go online and sign a document turning over ownership of your soul to Liquid Death. And then you join this community of people who have also done the same thing. The last thing, because TikTok has been obviously a big topic, did anyone pay attention to the Nutter Butter TikTok campaign from this past year? Wildly unhinged acid trip horror show. Yeah, it was just so absurd, and it definitely turned people off, but it also turned a lot of people on. And it turned people on to Nutter Butter, who is otherwise this like docile brand. So I think the moral of the story is that, you know, deviating from the norm, whether it elicits a positive response or a negative response, is going to capture attention and is going to be recalled and remembered much more effectively than something that's just emotionally neutral.
I think the theme here, and I'll answer this a little differently, is the fearlessness of brands, right? So a lot of what I view now is creator content. So it's hard to identify one brand for me, but I can tell the brands who allow creators to have fun with the briefs. Like Dunkin' did a really great piece with Becca Bastos, who's a comedian, where they were pretty much like, break up with your old coffee drink. And it was this sort of, I have to have a very difficult conversation with another coffee to then I'm moving to Dunkin', which was really fascinating and really hilarious. A lot of the content creators we work with, you know, just comedic content creators or on-air personalities. I really find it interesting and the best pieces of content when you allow that brief to come from a creator's voice. Liquid Death is like, you know, they're the best at that, where it's like, yes, we have brand guidelines, but we want you to go as wild as possible. So it's something to think about as well when you're partnering with creators and when you're partnering on briefs. Am I producing window content or mirror content, right? Am I letting the creators speak to their audience the way they do? Or am I asking you to say 15, 20, 35 words of a...
Deliver my brand message for me, please.
So, I mean, I think a lot of brands are doing that well. Dunkin' is one of them. I mean, the other one that I found really interesting at the Super Bowl and also the last few weeks is Claude. I mean, they're taking... and. I mean, we love ChatGPT too, but they are really taking an aggressive approach right now that ads are coming to AI, and this is what you got to be careful for. And it's really gripping because they're being fearless with this marketing messaging, and that's every brand I think we've talked about. In addition, of course, to Wayfair, Indeed, and GPJ,
of course.
Which
I'm kind of offended. None of you said Wayfair. I don't know what you're talking about.
Why is that? No. My point of it is at the end of the day, I'm just trying to give you a shout out, Amanda. That's it. But at the end of the day, it's how much you're going to let your brands breathe and how much freedom are you going to give the people who are making your creative make it the best it can be.
I'd say, in addition to all of the amazing brands up here, obviously, I would answer Abercrombie. So Abercrombie was the first fashion partner of the NFL. And what I thought they did so brilliantly was not only did they partner with the actual like athletes, which we know, rising talent, live sports, we know live sports are big. But they partnered with the WAGs. I love the WAGs. So wives and girlfriends, for those of you who don't know. But it's really leaning into like creators and thinking of creators differently. And I mean, frankly, like I haven't thought about Abercrombie since I was there, like way back when I was in high school and they asked me to work there and I was like, I'm busy. But now it's like kind of top of mind for me. I'm kind of looking. I don't know if it's like out of my age range, but I'll let you know.
I mean, the other one too about thinking about creators differently is just cross-platform brand partnerships. Yeah. NBC Universal, partnered with us with Bowen and Matt, but they also partnered with Sesame Street. And you had this great like cross-pollination of Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang with Elmo and Cookie Monster at the Olympics. And you saw all this nostalgia come out of this. And
nostalgia is huge.
Yes, which is just that nostalgia element where, wow, that spoke to an audience that, how would I think that Elmo and Cookie Monster would be at the Olympics like this? But it was really smart of them to think about what the pairings would be as they promoted the Winter Game.
Interesting. Well, fearless is one keyword that I'm probably taking away. Really brands being bold and true to their brands, true to their audience. Being thoughtful, careless, but also, analyzing, double click on what has been the norm for the past, years. So a lot of those efforts, I'm sure we will all be hopefully getting more attention from our audience. And thank you for your attention too for the last 30 minutes. We hope that was insightful, and thank you for your thoughtful answers. We'll end here. Thank you very much for your time and your time too as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.